Hello and welcome to the Nexus Today show, Mega Fugitive. If you've ever downloaded a movie illegally, you may know our man of the moment. He's the founder of Megaupload, a site you may be familiar with, and is wanted by the Americans for copyright crimes worth $500 million. He's lived a life of unimaginable luxury, mansions, yachts, jets, but he's currently under house arrest in New Zealand. The 44-year-old father of 5 is fighting extradition to the United States and now has one life left, the Supreme Court. It's time to get Kim Dotcom into the Nexus. Hello, I'm Matthew Moore, and today in the Nexus, the internet outlaw Kim Dotcom. He's fighting a US extradition order, but can he beat the rap? Well, we're joined by the woman who made the definitive Kim Dotcom documentary, the filmmaker, Annie Goldson. She's in Auckland. We also have the copyright and media law specialist, Steve Kunzewitz. He's joining us here in the UK. Now, we often say that our subject's life is a bit like a movie, but in this case, it really is. Here's the trailer for Annie's movie, Caught in the Web.
It's really like a Hollywood script. That's how I see it. This whole thing is a live movie that's playing out for like 4.5 years already, and I'm the main act.
Top story this hour, New Zealand is at the centre of one of the world's biggest internet piracy investigations.
Breach of copyright offences in the United States, money laundering.
I was a hacker. The hackers were wizards.
Claimed that he had hacked into the Pentagon.
All my life, I've been a little bit ahead of what everyone else was doing.
Megaupload was among the innovators of cloud services.
It was probably the largest pirate cyberlocker that existed in the world.
There were tens of millions of dollars coming in.
Some say he's a criminal mastermind, others an online innovator, but he has to be the most wanted man online.
He was living in this huge mansion with all these cars, living this high life. And to them, he was doing that with their money. You get in between America and its money, and you're going to have big problems.
Gates are open.
I think that the message is clear.
Located target, safe room.
Don't mess with the United States on copyright issues.
It's quite interesting that a lobby group can get the White House to move with military force.
I think the raid really got to me. We were really happy before.
We need to come up with a mechanism to protect our jobs and protect the intellectual property.
Kim's legal team would argue that they're no different than any other cloud storage service.
There's no great conspiracy. The facts are that .com is someone the United States thinks they've broken the law.
We can make these Hollywood studios happy so they will shoot more movies here. And on top of that, we can please the White House because on the highest levels, they wanted me shut down.
Even in the face of these huge legal battles, he likes to taunt the U.S. government.
He is parasiting. He is sucking the blood out of the artist.
Shutting down the internet.
I will fight until we know the truth.
Why are you turning red, Prime Minister? I'm not. This is the largest copyright case that our world has ever seen.
Well, let's go to the director of that movie, Annie Goldson. Annie, he's just an extraordinary character. He's larger than life and all of the other cliches. How did you find him?
Well, I think he is a larger-than-life character, but he definitely has a public persona and a more personal persona too, if you like. And I found him quite engaging, thoughtful, and actually quite quiet as a personality, which surprised me, given his public persona.
The public persona is more like a sort of gangster rapper living at large. But I mean, obviously a man cannot make this sort of business and this sort of money without having a very high IQ.
Well, I think he's certainly got incredible commercial acumen. He seems to know what people want, you know, and that's been true throughout his career, I think. And he knows how to market things. I think he's a brilliant marketer too. Whether that represents IQ or not, that's a big philosophical debate, of course.
This case, he's fighting it very hard, of course. Is he scared?
He doesn't appear to be. He's a confident person, but I think he has taken on really some of the most powerful institutions of the world, and I would be worried, sick, personally, but Kim Dotcom does exude confidence, at least at this point.
Through his various court cases, through the stages leading up to where we are now, he's actually revealed quite a lot about the country itself. Tell us about that.
Well, certainly. I mean, it was proven that there was a lot of ineptitude, at the very least, when the initial raid occurred. The raid seemed to New Zealanders, as well as to Kim Dotcom, very over the top for a country that doesn't usually engage in those sorts of militarized exercises. But there was a lot of problems with the paperwork, the processes of approval, and this all came out in various court cases. It was also revealed, importantly, that he was spied on illegally by our GCSB, which is our Five Eyes intelligence partner. So these were successes for Kim, and in some ways he did reveal to all New Zealanders some of the inner workings of the very powerful institutions who don't usually get much sunlight, much exposure. So that, in a way, has been an interesting process for us all, I think.
And are New Zealanders grateful to him for that, or is he overall a net loss for them?
Well, I think, you know, it's hard to explain to people that don't live here how small New Zealand is and the impact Kim Dotcom had, because he is such a huge personality and he was sort of living in the biggest house in the land and was constantly in the media. I think there were sympathies for him, particularly initially. He was seen as the underdog, and New Zealanders are usually pretty sympathetic to the underdog. You know, he was really battling the good fight. But also, I think in a sense, he wore people out, and particularly when he got involved politically in a political party, that did seem to turn a lot of New Zealanders against him.
Where's he living now? Reduced circumstances, presumably.
Well, no, he's living pretty comfortably, I would say, by anyone's standard. But he's living in Queenstown, which is another very, very beautiful area, which is really, it's in central Otago in the South Island. And it's attracting, by chance or circumstances, a lot of people from Silicon Valley, a lot of very wealthy Americans in particular, who I think maybe fear the end of the world and think New Zealand might be sufficiently out of the way.
This was a difficult interview to achieve and secure. What was he like to work with? How many hours of access and so on?
Well, I think when you ever make a documentary, and I'm very much an independent filmmaker, and Kim Dotcom is smart, he knew the film had to be independent, but also had to be seen to be independent to have the sorts of successes at festivals and so forth. If it had just been a puff piece, it wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Sure.
But nonetheless, you know, I've made documentaries for a long time, and your relationship with your principal subjects is always complex. There's always a kind of power relationship going on. And that certainly was the instance with us. I mean, in some ways, I would say I was lucky or not, because Kim Dotcom was kind of trapped in paradise. So I had access to him, whereas, you know, other groups of filmmakers may not have had.
Yeah.
But really, I think it's a question always of building a degree of trust without relinquishing your independence.
What was the most striking feature of that one-to-one, face-to-face meeting?
At times, he was very angry, and at times, he was very sad.
Yeah.
And I think it was those moments that I thought were powerful.
Thank you, Annie, very much for that insight. We're going to get into the business now. We've looked at the man. Let's look at the business of his. The Megaupload site, which he founded. At its peak, it accounted for 4% of all traffic online, with 50 million visitors every day. It was the 13th most visited site in the world. Well, today that spot is occupied by Twitter, so no wonder cyber outlaws are so keen to get into the business.
Do you miss the days when you could watch and listen to whatever you liked, whenever you liked, for free? I know I do. Who leaves their kid home alone twice? There was room for both of you on that door, Rose. What? He can see dead people. If you've had to pay for your film since the U.S. government shut down Megaupload, despair no more. There's a new boy in town. Super Upload! Megaupload had servers in America and Canada and the Netherlands, but we can match that and more. Just like Megaupload, you can store your files with us and download them whenever you want. It's a bit like the cloud, but without all that security nonsense, so everyone gets to share it. Just make sure you don't upload anything that infringes copyright law. because you might make us too much money. Tell them how it works, voiceover guy.
Well, just like Megaupload, SuperUpload is a one-click hosting service.
What the hell does that even mean?
You can upload your files to our servers. We'll give you a unique link, which you can share with your friends, family, and colleagues.
Or millions of complete strangers.
And it's all absolutely free.
Whoa, wait. This thing isn't actually gonna make us any money?
Don't you worry about that. Mr. Dotcom and his associates made $175 million over a 7-year period between 2005 and 2012, when Megaupload was shut down.
What? 175 million bucks? That's crazy! How did they do it?
25 million came from advertising, but the majority of it, 150 million, came from premium account fees.
Ooh, premium, fancy. So tell me, voiceover guy, does SuperUpload have a premium service?
It certainly does. For a small monthly fee, you can get unlimited downloads, no waiting time before each download begins, our highest download speeds, and considerably fewer adverts.
But still some, because we are running a business. It's a no-brainer. It's the best way to store and share your favorite content online. And it almost definitely doesn't violate any copyright laws. Sign up to SuperUpload today and definitely get that premium account.
Well, let's bring our copyright law expert in now. Steve, I have to ask you, there are many sites like this and many of these so-called cyber outlaws wishing to make that kind of money. Why was Megaupload so preeminent among all the sites?
Well, it's one of a series that the US government, the UK government, a number of different copyright authorities have been looking to shut down. A number of platforms they've been looking to shut down over a number of years. I think, as the previous guest has hinted, it's maybe Kim's extravagant lifestyle and attitude towards the people who are pursuing him that has seen them come after him so hard. But it's worth noting as well that before the New Zealand courts, it's not just a matter of copyright infringement. He's accused of wire fraud, racketeering, and last time he was before the courts in February, I think it was, there was a suggestion that actually this case is a lot more simple. It's more about fraud, so it becomes a much easier offence to justify an extradition. But certainly he's made himself into a target that an awful lot of people are taking aim at.
I can see, Steve, why his extravagant lifestyle is bringing the attention of the haters. They're perhaps seeing him really flaunt his wealth from this in front of them. But in terms of the site itself, it was extremely successful. What made it more successful than, say, Putlocker and others, the contemporaries?
That's a very fair question. I think the argument the US government would have that what made it particularly successful was that it became a haven for IP piracy, if you like, in that much the same way as Viacom had a problem with YouTube a few years ago. These platforms are set up and you're allowed to share content. You're only meant to share your own. When you start sharing other people's content without permission, that's when you stray into copyright infringement. And I think the way the US government sees it is that Megaupload was certainly one of the biggest methods for sharing content unlawfully, which is another reason hinted at in what Kim's had to say and what other people have had to say in his behalf, that perhaps this whole exercise is seen as politically motivated because the US wants to tell big content producers that your content is safe in our hands and we will do our best to protect it.
Annie, I just want to come back to you. When you were talking to him, I know that you said you were essentially becoming a bit of a copyright law expert in your own right. You had to sort of take a quick 101 on this whole situation. What is Kim Dotcom's defence?
I think the defence is that that's just the platform, and really under the DMCA, which my understanding is the default copyright law, if you like, that really responsibility lies with the users, not with the platform.
So that's the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in the United States, which gives you a safe harbour. Actually, if I could just bring in Steve, the DMCA, you could just quickly explain that?
So the vast majority of copyright laws, the DMCA included, will say if you are just the repository for this information, it really becomes up to the users to make sure they don't share content unlawfully. And the terms of use you sign when you first sign up to use them will say you cannot share copyright protected material or other people's copyright protected material on our platform. So that's the whole argument, really, that we just provide you with a means to disseminate this information. We have to place a certain amount of trust in our users.
What do you make of that defence then?
Sorry?
What do you make of Kim Dotcom's defence then, that he's just simply there providing a service?
It's a defence that's been made around the world in pretty much every copyright law I know, certainly here in the UK. their defence, and they're protected by EU law, they're protected by a number of other laws, is pretty much that they cannot be expected to moderate and vet all the content that goes onto their site, just because of the volume of that content and the sheer number of users. And that's respected by an awful lot of laws around the world. But I think the issue that we have here is that the US government says that he knew what his site was being used for, and he's facilitated that piracy, he's facilitated that infringement, which is one of the issues that he's become a target.
If I can come back to you, Annie, for a minute, what is his defence against extradition to the United States?
Well, I think he's saying the reasons he was arrested for all rest on copyright. So all of the other more criminal things, if you like fraud and racketeering and so forth, rest on the fundamental copyright infringement accusation. But copyright in itself is not an extraditable offence. So he's arguing he was arguing, if all of these other charges, more serious charges, rest on copyright, and if copyright is not extraditable, then they all collapse like a house of cards, so to speak.
Steve, if I can come back to you for a moment. If he's able to make the case that what he's doing in New Zealand isn't illegal, can he then persuade the Supreme Court, do you think, not to extradite him to the United States?
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. It's important to remember that the vast majority of copyright infringement cases are civil. They don't normally involve criminal elements. The reason that this one does is because of the sheer scale and what the US government refers to as the organised, almost racketeering approach that's been taken to the way that copyright's been disseminated. That's another reason why the US lawyers were saying this is more of a fraud issue, because that is a more straightforward charge to try and base an extradition request on.
Do you think they can pull levers to affect the outcome of this extradition?
I think there's a fair argument to say that if there was an ability for them to do that, we wouldn't be going through this judicial process at the moment, and we've just got to take it what it is. Certainly, the big content lobby is extremely powerful in the United States. If you look at the discussions at the moment between Fox and Disney to create a massive intellectual property powerhouse, it is a very, very significant contributor to the US income. But I think to go beyond that and to suggest that there's some conspiracy theory behind it, I'd need to see more convincing evidence than that.
Well, do we know yet that the Supreme Court in New Zealand is willing to hear this appeal?
To the best of my knowledge, the last major report on this was at the start of July, so I think we're waiting to hear further news from that. But I'm almost sure that legal steps will have been taken to move that appeal along in the meantime.
Okay. Now, even leaving aside the piracy allegations, Kim Dotcom is a fascinating man. He has some interesting views on a wide range of political issues, including the deep state, the military's relationship with Hollywood, Hillary Clinton, and Donald Trump. Here's a quick sample.
The CIA has a huge department just for working with movie makers. If you say it in that way, then you can have access to this plane carrier and you can film our fighter jets and all this stuff. It is also Hollywood that turns these wars into some kind of awesome thing. The deep state is a business. The Russia department of the deep state is a significant percentage of their business. Imagine if all of a sudden relations with Russia were friendly, which ultimately means a significant budget cut for the deep state. She is a complete fraud, a criminal scum, and I'm really happy, even though it's really a tiny, tiny, tiny role that I played, but I'm really happy that I was a part of stopping her from becoming president.
Annie, does Kim strike you as having special information thanks to his hacking abilities, or is he a conspiracy theorist and paranoid?
I really don't know Kim's access to information. He's very well connected. I suspect he's not accessing this information through hacking, but more through his connections.
He gives you the impression that Hollywood and other forces are pulling levers to put pressure on New Zealand to send him off to the United States, right?
I think Kim very much believes that, first of all, Hollywood has a lot of influence over the US government, particularly the Democratic Party. I also do think that the US government has quite a lot of influence over the New Zealand government. I mean, we are certainly independent and have taken some what I would consider admirable independent stances on various issues. But nonetheless, we have been part of the kind of Western alliance, which I think is, ties us very much to US policy. So, I mean, I think, and then there is the issue around Hollywood's presence in New Zealand. New Zealand is often used as a location, and that does bring a certain amount of income, a certain amount of technological development to the country that supports the film industry. Kim has a conspiracy in the film, which is that he says that, in a sense, the John Key government, the national government, which was the last government we had before the one we have now, effectively offered him up to Hollywood and the US government, that he was given residency in New Zealand so he could be extradited. Had he stayed in Germany, for example, he couldn't have been extradited because there is no extradition agreement. So he does see it as a kind of, at least a tacit agreement to really wrap him up and send him offshore.
Kim Dotcom actually established his own party in New Zealand. What happened there?
Well, he formed an alliance. He formed the Internet Party, which was kind of like a pirate party, a European pirate party. And that was in a sense that probably got him offside with a lot of New Zealanders, because whereas they may have had some sympathy for him as the underdog, they didn't really want him to interfere with their politics. I think that for Kim was very much about unseating John Key, our former Prime Minister, because they had formed there was quite a lot of animosity personally.
And your former Prime Minister had to apologise to Kim Dotcom.
He did, yes, because Kim was spied on illegally, and at that point, John Key was also the Minister of Security Intelligence.
Well, whatever you think of his views on politics, it's undeniable that few people can match his flair for self-promotion, his gift for innovative technology and gaming, too. To add that to his list of accomplishments. Just downright eccentric and excessive behaviour, the likes of which you may never see again.
In at 5, not one for subtlety, Mr. Dotcom reportedly spent more than $1 million chartering a 240-foot luxury yacht which he moored in Monte Carlo during the 2000 Monaco Grand Prix. The perfect party pad, even princes fell under the Dotcom charm. At 4, he's an internet giant and, well, something of a regular giant too, standing some 6'7" tall and weighing in at more than 300 pounds. He's a big target for the FBI. Number 3, 3 cars with vanity license plates among the 18 luxury vehicles he owned. In at number 2, a love of cars is a theme in his life. He has taken part in the Gumball 3000 International Road Rally twice, in 2001 and 2004. And at number 1, himself, at least when it comes to video games. Before his arrest, he was the world's #1 ranked player on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. But it's really not that impressive. There were only 15 million online players for competition. Oh, but there are so many more. We can't stop now. In at -1, while his New Zealand residency was being considered, Dotcom planned a huge fireworks display at Auckland at a cost of 600,000 Kiwi dollars. And at -2, the man's nickname is Dr. Evil.
I didn't spend 6 years in evil medical school to be called Mr. Thank you very much.
And this really is the last one, we promise. Any look at his New Zealand estate will reveal a deep love of animal statues. Here we can see a life-size rhinoceros, and here's a pair of giraffes, which both feature heavily in his self-produced music video, Good Life.
The Good Life.
I know I said the last one was it, but this really is too good to ignore. That's right, he's also a musician. The video for this song, The Good Life, is said to have cost him $24 million to produce.
Well, it has been an extraordinary life so far. But Annie, what about the future? When you were talking to him over those hours, did he express any plans for the future, assuming he beats this extradition request?
He certainly does express a fondness for New Zealand. I mean, he does appreciate New Zealand, which is a, pretty cool place to be living on the whole. His children are well established at school. So I do feel should he get off the charges he's facing, he would probably settle and continue as he is.
Does he feel chastened by all of this, or is he going to be as bold and as daring as ever?
Chastened is not an adjective or whatever it is that I would refer to Kim with that personally. He has just remarried too, to a woman who just graduated law school, so now he says he's going to get even cheaper law fees.
He seems to be an irrepressible force, and well, we'll just have to see if he's learned his lesson or not. Annie Goldson, thank you very much for that, and Steve Kunzowitz, thank you for your analysis as well. We saw a little bit of his video at the end of that last report. I think we should just go out on that. It's called Good Life. Thank you for watching.